Academica Media. You are listening to Charter School Superstars, bringing you the voices of an education revolution.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Ryan Kairalla. Our guest this week is the head of education for Avantis Education, an acclaimed edtech company that created the brands LearnPad, ClassCharge, and ClassVR. Recently, our guest company launched Eduverse, a groundbreaking platform that gives K-12 students access to the Metaverse in a safe and secure environment. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting www.avantiseducation.com. We are happy to welcome Chris Klein on a Charter School Superstars. Hello, Chris.
Hi there. How are you? Glad to be here.
Glad to have you, man. I can't tell you the last time I've been excited for an interview as I am for this one. Aside from just generally being interested in education, I love the metaverse and the potential of it. Not 10 feet from where I'm currently talking to you right now, I actually, looking at my VR device, I do lots of things on it. I play golf on it. I have a standing golf date with a friend of mine who lives in Seattle. I've played table tennis on it. I've done some office work on it. I've done video conferences on it. I really do see it as the future of how we're going to work and play. But I'm interested in hearing your perspective on how the metaverse could be the future of how we educate. So for the uninitiated, Chris, tell us a little bit about what the metaverse is and talk a little bit about the role you see it playing in K-12 education.
Absolutely. I think you actually did a really good lead in there. The metaverse, whether we call it Ready Player One, whether we call it Second Life, whether we call it Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, NFT, it really boils down to the shift of having people interacting in real time in virtual spaces. That's probably the highest level simplified version of metaverse that I can come up with. The big difference between what we traditionally have been doing with, let's say, Zoom calls and things like that is, generally speaking, people are represented by avatars as opposed to actual video cameras or images or screenshots or things like that. Most of the effort has been put in, I always like to say, it's kind of following the dollar. So a lot of it has really gone into, as you said, the play aspect, the entertainment industry. You're going to see a lot of games. You're going to see a lot of, as I said, the Bitcoins, the NFTs. Where the money goes, that's where usually the development happens first and foremost. But as we've traditionally been seeing a shift in education towards more of a disaggregated offering, whether it be content, whether it be professors, whether it be online learning or virtual colleges or virtual schools, all of that is sort of leading us to another place, which is this can be used for training, this can be used for instruction, this can be used to get more students the information they want in a manageable way that goes beyond any specific one piece of software or one piece of hardware. But education has to be protected more than anything else. We don't want someone figuring out how to turn a science lesson into a way that I can sell 90% of the screen space for ads. That's not what we want out of our education institutions. And that's why it's really important to talk about the metaverse, but to really focus in on the Eduverse. What is it we can do in the K-12 education space?
Well, that is an interesting point about all of this. And I know that that's something that your company has prioritized with respect to K-12 and the metaverse, is making this a safe environment, making this a secure environment, making this an environment that's appropriate for children. And in a lot of cases, what you're doing is really the Wild West. We're only now just starting to discover the potential of metaverse education, VR education, particularly in the charter school space. I think just this fall, we have launching the first metaverse charter school in the state of Florida, and it's pretty interesting to see what they're doing with it. And I've seen some of the lessons that the teachers are doing there, where students get to virtually travel all over the world for school lessons in the metaverse. Pretty exciting stuff. What are some of the cool lessons that you're seeing teachers do using VR?
Well, I think it's really interesting. We've been doing VR in education now for about 6 or 7 years. But whenever I talk to anyone about VR, I think there's really two schools of thought. And this sounds like a bit of a marketing pitch the way that I say this, but I do truly believe it. And that is, everyone out there is doing a consumer play in education, except for us. And what I mean by that is Every other manufacturer out there started off with a cool piece of kit. Hey, I can build this really cool consumer headset. Now, how do I make it educational? I don't know. Throw people into an app store and let them find an app that has something remotely to do with what it is they're teaching. Class VR and Avantis, we actually came at this from a completely different direction. I always joke because it feels like I'm dumbing it down when I say we envision VR as the entry point to be the next generation of the overhead transparency. It's about utilizing really cool tools and pieces of content to enhance and enrich what you're already doing. Because as an educator, you know your students better than I do. You know your school better than I do. You know your curriculum better than I do. So for me to think I'm going to create an app that's going to meet all of your needs is kind of silly. So we've taken a platform approach, and we actually started with the questions of if a teacher is going to use virtual or augmented reality resources to enhance their existing instruction, what hurdles are they going to face? So they need to be able to be in control of what content the students have access to. They need to be able to see what the students are seeing. They need to be able to push and focus the students on only certain things. They need to be able to have an easy way to bridge between topics. And they shouldn't have to become an app developer to be able to do all of that. So Class VR at its very core, where we stepped into it, is we said we're going to focus on resources such as images, video, and 3D models. So if we can give you the easy ability to deliver that content to your students, regardless of the grade level or subject area, we know you're going to feel a lot more comfortable because you're not having to recreate your entire curriculum. So I always say content to me is not about an app. Content to me is like cars on the road. My job at Class VR is we want to make sure that the bridges, tunnels, and roads are safe and secure for you to be able to get the content moved from point A to point B to enhance what you're already doing.
And I think a big part of that idea of making the metaverse accessible in K-12 and making it accessible to teachers, a big part of that is hardware too, right? If you guys have special proprietary headsets that only work for, your metaverse and schools have to buy it and it's expensive, you're not going to get the implementation you want. But in your case, you made the Eduverse accessible on wide variety of VR headsets, laptops, tablets, Chromebooks, and phones. So how much was sort of this kind of universal device accessibility central to what you guys are trying to do with the Eduverse?
It was actually very central. It was really important. And a lot of this came out of our work during the COVID years. Okay. As you said, we were a turnkey solution with our Class VR offering, meaning we built that management software on the back end. And at the very end of all of that, we said, we could really make this simple for people by having secure hardware as well. And that's our Class VR headset, which is still what a lot of people know us for. But as we were going into COVID, as we were dealing with students that were not on school campuses, as we were looking at the fact that nobody wanted to really put things on their face when you're passing around, the COVID virus and things like that. So there were challenges that came out of that, and we initially created a little application called VR Room. So if I can just dig into this a little bit, we determined that one of the big things that students were missing when they were away from schools was the ability to have that social interaction and social engagement. I mentioned a previous video sort of conferencing software that a lot of schools used during this time. It kind of rhymes with Vroom, which is what we called ours. But the number one fall down was people hated the camera. The students at home didn't want people to see what their rooms looked like. They didn't want people to see their dog walking in the background. The teachers didn't like the cameras either, but they had to be there. It was a necessary thing to be able to show that the students were actively engaged. So we thought, could we build something in this virtual world and make it free, purely for a way for teachers to get together with students, but the students are represented by avatars instead. And that was a free offering that we came out with, said we'll create something like a playground or a spaceship or a beach. where students can join in. They have voice over IP so they can talk to each other. They have positional audio. So if my avatar is next to yours, it's very loud. If I'm on the other side of the beach, you can maybe hear a murmur, but not hear me clearly. And then we said, this is really cool. Let's actually look at this from an educational perspective now. And that brought about a product of ours called Avantis World, which was the world's first virtual reality education theme park, where instead of just being in a gymnasium, what if we were able to put all the students simultaneously with their avatars and the teachers walking through the Valley of the Dinosaurs, or on the bus with Rosa Parks, or in the middle of a Civil War battlefield, or on the surface of the moon? All of these things then became opportunities for us to create these scenes, these explorable scenes that allowed us to take and apply pedagogical literacy towards this technological delivery method. And that was Avantis World. What we've done now is we said all of those things can be done with any device with a browser. It does not require our headset. It works for everyone's headset. It works for everyone's Chromebook, as you said, laptop, phone, makes no difference. Doesn't matter where you're located in the world. You can have real-time interaction as long as it's initiated by the teacher. And that's where we start to put those guardrails up to protect the Eduverse versus the Metaverse.
Well, can you tell us a little bit more about those protections and guardrails? Because as I am talking about the Metaverse and as we're talking about all these different really cool applications of it, being able to transport students to a Civil War battlefield, for example, I know the teachers out there are listening and immediately thinking about, oh no, what are all the ways this could go wrong? What about student privacy? What about student safety? I know that's something that your organization thinks a lot about. So tell us a little bit more about those guardrails that you guys have put in.
Yeah, so it really boils down to, there's a couple different things you mentioned there. So first and foremost, if you're using Avantis World, the nice part about that is there is the aspect of having a built-in grade book on the back end. So I'm actually able to, for example, treat that Civil War battlefield scene, and I can actually use that as an assignment. I can assign it to you. You can go into it yourself from home individually. There are checkpoints, there's guiding questions, things like that. And at the end, there's a quiz that you can take, and that reports back to me. That is a piece of student data right there. However, I don't have to use it in that way. If I simply go to that scene and say share, it's going to pop up a QR code for me or a share link. I send it out to everybody else. They scan it with their phone, they scan it with their laptop's camera, or they just enter it into their browser. Boom, they now appear as an avatar. I do not actually know who you are other than the fact that I sent the link to you, but I don't know that it's Joe or Billy or Susie. So we can be in there. We're not collecting that information. We're just on the same web browser instance. Yeah. And as a teacher, once I end the session, everybody gets booted off. So they can't go in after the fact. There can't be any issues of cyberbullying or anything like that. This is a brand new launch for us, the Eduverse, eduverse.com. And we are really interested in making this as robust as possible. However, we've got some additional features that are still rolling out. One of them would be the ability for the teacher to, or the host, shall we say, to be able to hush everyone, basically mute everyone's mic, lock their user IDs, stop them from being able to change their avatar look. So there are those types of things that we need, or raising your hand, or being able to call everyone back. Because if I'm in a space, if you use the theme park example, everybody go where you want, but at 12 o'clock, you all need to come back here and check in with me. So I want to be able to simply click a button and bring all the avatars back for instruction, or attendance, or whatever it may happen to be.
So for the teachers who are interested in at least, dipping their toe in this, exploring it, learning more about the Eduverse and Avantis World and everything that's entailed with it, how do they get started? Do they need to create an account? Is this something that's paid for? Do they have to go through their school? What do teachers have to do for step one here?
really good question. And all this changed as of last week.
Well, good timing.
with the announcement at ISTE. So when we walked into ISTE, we basically had two primary products as a company. We had Class VR, which is still, in my opinion, the best turnkey hardware software blend. If you need headsets, if you want to have that fully immersive environment, Class VR is the way to go for education. So you can go to classvr.com. We can connect with you, come out to a demo, all that type of stuff. We also then sold Avantis World. If you want that premium content, if you want all of those 265 explorable scenes spread across Trip Through Time and Literacy Land and Super Science and Engaging Earth, that is its own product, works across all hardware, etc. As of last week, though, at ISTE, we just had two big announcements. Number one is we announced, as you said, the Eduverse. That's sort of our umbrella that is encompassing everything we do. So if anyone wants to get involved with that, all they have to do is go to eduverse.com. In the upper right-hand corner, it gives you an option to create an account or to go into the Eduverse. And once you create an account, it's going to say, are you using Class VR hardware or are you using anything else? If you say anything else, it's going to take you to our second announcement, which is a product, and this is a completely free product. It's Expeditions powered by the Eduverse. And that will give them the ability to have access to some of those scenes, to the free rooms that I talked about, like the playground and all of that stuff. It also gives you access into some of our Class VR content that we provide in our starter library. So if you pull up a 3D model, all the students as avatars can walk around the perimeter of the 3D model, look at it, and you can get up close to it, or if you're in a VR video or something like that. And all of that content is going to continue to be expanded between now and the launch of school.
That's exciting. And I encourage our viewers and listeners to check out Avantis Education, Avantis education.com. Learn more about all this. Before we get to our final question, Chris, I have kind of a philosophical question about the metaverse and education for you. It's something I've always wanted to ask anybody who works in this area just because of my own curiosity. A lot of things that you're talking about with respect to the metaverse and education, they strike me as really powerful supplements to what we're already doing in K-12. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. For teachers, this is a value add to the things that they're already doing. You're not trying to get teachers to completely change the way they do things. Do you think it's always going to be this way? Or do you think that we have potential for the metaverse not to just be a supplement to K-12 education, but to be a replacement for K-12 education as we know it, where it is like Ready Player One? You put on a headset and that's your whole academic school life, and that's the way that we're delivering education. Is that a possibility in your eyes?
I think that there are a lot of societal issues revolving around that. What is expected, and we could talk about the agrarian system of the school calendar and why we have 3 months off in the summer versus going year round, and some schools have started to play around with that. I think there are elements to that that are really intriguing, but I want to answer that in two ways. The first way is, again, with the Eduverse, what we're looking to do is we want to provide a platform. The real power, the real expertise comes in when talented educators can take a platform and get it to fit the way that they actually work. And I've got a really good example about that if you've got a minute, based off of a school that we work with in Massachusetts. This is a school that works with a primary population of students with autism. So one of the great things about our Class VR headset offering that I find is, yes, we give you a starter library of content, but we also give you the ability to bring in your own content. So having a 360 camera, you can go record your own video, take your own pictures, and we can talk about that, and that's all nice and neat. But the way they used it, I never in a million years would have thought of. Working with students with autism, autistic students tend to have different triggers in the classroom. And when students get agitated, they need to kind of get into some sort of soothing mechanism, whether it be a self-soothing mechanism or something like that, to be able to get to calm down and refocus back on learning. I'm not an expert in autistic education. I never would have come up with this design. But one student at the school, the way that he self-soothed was he actually would go out on the playground And by swinging on the swings for about 30 seconds, the motion soothed him, calmed him down. January in Massachusetts, you can't go out on the playground. It's too cold, it's snowy, it's icy, etc. But
Sure.
one of the teacher aides went out with a camera, recorded 30 seconds of being on a swing, came back in, put it into the class VR system, loaded it onto a headset that they keep at the side of the student during instruction. If the student gets agitated, he can simply put the headset on and within 30 seconds has self-soothed to get back to be able to refocus.
That's incredible.
And that's the type of thing that, you know, I would never have created specifically that for someone, but it was because someone had a vision and we gave them that opportunity to open up and do something that was not necessarily scripted for them like an app would be. Now take that same idea and apply it to your question about the metaverse and about the Eduverse. We're only beginning to see the scratches on the surface of what this could be. I absolutely think that we know we're having a challenge in education right now, in K-12 education in the United States, with getting qualified teachers. We're seeing a massive amount of retirements happening, which means people are scrambling to get those really high qualified teachers. So then you get some high qualified teachers, you fill your head count, right? You've got your full staff. But then a student comes to you and says, I want to learn Mandarin. Well,
Yep.
The likelihood of you having Mandarin in your curriculum, unless you are very specialized, is rather low. But there might be 2 other students at a neighboring high school, 5 other students the next state over, 6 more students, etc., that all want to learn Mandarin. Now you apply the platform of the Eduverse on that. You have one instructor, regardless of location, able to bring students into the Eduverse and have that instruction. Now you're able to offer additional credits, additional opportunities, and the students are able to fine tune what it is they're looking for. So I think there's an advantage there. The question is going to be, how long is it going to take to go fully that way? I don't know if we'll ever get there just because of the funding models, the taxes, you need to have physical plant structures in a lot of cases, et cetera. But I definitely think we're going to start to see that bolster what we're able to offer, because the experts are not necessarily all flocking to the K-12 industry the way we would like to, but there are a lot of experts that are not teachers that are available in the rest of the world, in the rest of the population that we could be leveraging.
It's an exciting prospect. And we're actually starting to see a little bit of this in the charter school space, where you have these charter schools that are multi-school networks, where it's not just one school, but multiple schools throughout the country under the umbrella of a single nonprofit, where they can, if you have one Mandarin teacher that's in one state, you can have that teacher teaching classes either virtually or through the metaverse to a wide range of students that would also be interested in taking that course around the country or perhaps even around the world. That's pretty exciting to me. And your example that you brought up of that special education teacher finding a great use for the metaverse, that's just a great description of, I think, one of the most important things to remember when it comes to ed tech, which is ed tech, or in this case, even the metaverse, it works best when you let teachers drive the innovation. Otherwise, you get these terrible product market fit problems where you have some folks out in Silicon Valley who try to foist a particular model on teachers, and those people are very talented, obviously great with technology, but don't know the day-to-day realities of the K-12 classroom. And so you got to listen to those teachers. You have to let them drive the innovation. And what a great example of that, Chris. Before we let you go, one more question I want to throw your way that I'm excited to get your response to, especially given everything you've just brought up here. If with the snap of your fingers, Chris, you could make any change to the education system, what change would it be?
Time. I think that there is a lot that we are throwing at our educators right now. And I think that the thing that gets me up every morning from a product development perspective is I know that a gifted teacher could teach with a wet paper bag and a stick if that's all they had. So from a product development perspective, I know that I need to come out with something better than that. Everything I do from this side of the house, because I was a former teacher, I was a former technology coordinator, I was in the classroom. I know that everything from my side of the house needs to be something that makes it better, because what they're doing already has been proven decades and decades. It works. And now we're thinking all this stuff is happening around them, and everything boils down to change management. How do educators deal with change? And different personalities deal with it differently. But the one underlying factor is we just need a little bit more time to breathe. If you're under the gun with attendance and testing and technology and everything else that the teacher's being asked to do in today's environment, they can't step back and have that aha moment, which is when you go from the integration into an implementation, the purchase into the usage. And that only comes about, as you said, when teachers are able to really absorb what it could do and reframe it to work for them instead of them having to work for the technology. Time, to me, is a critical element.
He is the head of education for Avantis Education. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting avantiseducation.com. Chris, this has been a real pleasure. I've learned so much from chatting with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me on. Hopefully we can continue to bang the drum and help education as best we can moving forward.
Right on. And thank you all for listening to Charter School Superstars.
The views expressed on the preceding program have been those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Academica, its clients, staff, affiliates, or advertisers.